Today, Triumph announced a Euro 5 update to the awesome 1200 Scramblers, as well as a new Steve McQueen special edition. So in today's video, we'll go over it all in full detail, including the specs and prices of the new bikes to find out what's new for this model year. But before we get started, if you're new here and you want to see more of the latest motorcycle news and reviews right here on YouTube, then please do remember to hit subscribe. First, a look at that Euro 5 update to the two existing 1200 Scrambler models, the slightly more road-focused XC and the taller, higher-spec off-road biased XE. The majority of the Scramblers remain the same, with the 1200cc high-power variant of the Bonneville Parallel Twin, Öhlins shocks and Showa forks, Brembo M50 brakes, and the same multifunction TFT display, which enables the rider to control the riding modes and rider aids, and the Bluetooth connectivity, all of which remains unchanged for 2021. It's worth a reminder that the XE gets lean-sensitive ABS and traction control, an extra off-road pro riding mode, heated grips as standard, and more travel in the suspension along with a lengthened swing arm. As with all other manufacturers, bikes now have to meet stricter Euro 5 emissions regulations, and as such, both models have had a bit of work done to clean them up. But the good news is that power and torque have been unaffected, with 90 PS still produced at 7,400 RPM and 110 Nm of peak torque at 3,950. One of the Euro 5 changes is to the exhaust system, and they've also taken the opportunity to address one of the most common complaints about the last generation. The inside of your right thigh could get pretty toasty against the high-level pipes, especially in warm weather and slow-moving traffic. So whilst the redesign was prompted by Euro 5, they're also claiming improved heat distribution on the new system, which is good news indeed. I had the XE model for a couple of weeks a while back when I was still living and commuting through central London, and I did find myself having to cock a knee to put a bit of distance between my leg and the pipes. That said, it's hard to quantify such an update on paper, so I'll have to get my hands on one when the new press bikes are available to see if it's actually worked. There's also been an update to the paint options, with the XC previously available in green or black, whilst the XE came in blue or white. In the new lineup, both models will be offered in a new plain black, a revised khaki green, and the cobalt blue of the previous Gen XE. There will still be a couple of aesthetic distinctions between the two bikes though, apart from the fact that the XE is visibly taller, and that's the brown saddle on the XC as opposed to the black on the XE, and the XC also gets a black finish on the forks as opposed to the more bling-looking gold anodization on the XE. From a practical perspective, these new tanks look like they'll be a bit easier to look after. The previous Gen XCs had a half-gloss, half-matte clear coat, which I have to admit looks great to me, but I'd assume it's a pain to look after because if you wanted to polish the gloss part, you'd have to be pretty cautious around the matte. The new khaki green finish is entirely matte, so you could just use a matte paint finishing product on the whole tank. So less heat from the exhaust and an easier bike to clean should make for a better ownership experience, but there are a couple of downsides for 2021. First is that the prices have gone up a little along with the rest of the Bonneville range, and I'll get onto those at the end, but there's also been a 6 kilogram weight increase overall. Now I'd assume that a good share of that has come from the exhaust system changes, so potentially this won't be as much of a problem for anyone planning to go for an aftermarket pipe, but there could be a few gains elsewhere, as 6 kilograms is quite a lot. But on to the new limited edition inspired by Steve McQueen, who was a successful desert racer outside of his Hollywood career and also a massive fan of the Triumph bikes of the time. In fact, the TR6 that was used to film the famous jump in The Great Escape is currently on display at the Triumph Factory Visitor Experience in Hinckley and provides some of the inspiration for this special limited edition. There'll be just 1,000 of these made, all of which will come with a certificate of authenticity stating the bike's VIN and signed by Triumph CEO Nick Bloor, as well as Steve McQueen's son Chad. On top of that, there's a new billet machine bar clamp, which comes with both Steve McQueen's signature and the bike's limited edition number laser etched into it. The main feature of this model is the paint job, with a competition green color scheme and some nice detail on the tank, including a brushed foil knee pad area with hand-painted gold lining, a gold heritage Triumph logo, and a dedicated gold and silver tank graphic. And in the style of that original TR6, the front and rear mudguard have also been painted in that competition green, as opposed to the brushed aluminium finish of the standard bikes. There are also a few accessories thrown in, such as the aluminium radiator guard, engine protection bars, and the brown seat for more of that old school look. But elsewhere, the specs are the same as the 1200 XE, including those Euro 5 updates, of course. In terms of pricing for these new models, the standard XC comes in at £11,800 and the XE at £12,600, so both of them are up by £300 versus the previous model year. Part of the justification for this across the Bonneville lineup is the extra precious metals required in the exhaust system to get it to pass Euro 5, which they say are exceptionally expensive. From the punter's perspective, that's not really something you can get excited about, especially with the weight gains, but I doubt £300 is going to be a deal breaker for most potential buyers. As for the Steve McQueen edition, those will start at $13,600, so $1,000 on top of the standard XE. That doesn't seem too bad to me, considering that the accessories alone would cost about £500, and so the other $500 accounts for the paint job and the exclusivity, which ought to help this bike hold its value. For anyone who's a collector or a big McQueen fan, it should be a pretty tempting proposition. I'm absolutely certain that they'll sell out though, as the Bond Scrambler Special Edition, which was announced last year, cost a whopping $18,500 for essentially a similar spec, and the 250 of those produced all went pretty quickly. I believe dealers are taking pre-orders now, with bikes available from June. As always, I'd love to know what you make of the new 1200 Scramblers in the comments below. It is a mild update, but that McQueen edition does look pretty good and is a relatively affordable way to get hold of a limited edition Triumph, especially when you compare it to the Bond edition or the TFCs, for example. The Street Scrambler is also being updated, and I can tell you the full details about that next week. So if you're new here and you want to see those videos as soon as they go live, then please do hit subscribe, and I'll see you then.